On this day, a presumably brief summary of my thoughts regarding 1982's Vicenda, directed by Roger Christian. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the real artist behind this film is cinematographer Roger Pratt. The Sender would be Roger Pratt's first feature film as cinematographer, before photographing, most notably, Terry Gilliam's The Crimson Permanent Assurance, Gilliam's Brazil, Neil Jordan's Mona Lisa, and Tim Burton's Batman. As you can gather, he is one of my most beloved cinematographers. For Brazil and Batman alone, Pratt's mastery is patent. Pratt had previously photographed Black Angel for Roger Christian. For those of you who don't know, Roger Christian is best known as the set decorator on the original Star Wars. He won an Oscar for his work, and acting as the production designer for Alien. Shortly afterward, he helmed his own short film, mentored by George Lucas, a vivid, ethereal fantasy short titled Black Angel. This short film was used to introduce theatrical screenings of The Empire Strikes Back in the UK, Australia, and Scandinavia. I am unsure as to how the two Rogers were introduced, but their pairing proved effective. Black Angel is vibrant and moody, quite an enrapturing project. Obviously, Christian believed so, hiring Pratt as director of photography for his feature film debut and his introduction to directing pictures for proper Hollywood distribution, 1982's Vicenda. I should also mention Christian's other short film, 1981's The Dollar Bottom, which won the Oscar for Best Short Subject. I have not seen this picture, however, so I cannot give my own comments on it for now. The Sender was a British production, though it began its life as a screenplay by one American, Thomas Baum. It has been said that 20th Century Fox wanted to employ this script as a sequel to Brian De Palma's The Fury, although this production never launched off of the ground. That potentially could have been interesting. The Fury is one of my absolute favourites of all time, and how they would have succeeded it, presumably, without De Palma, does intrigue me. This production was picked up by Paramount, who intended to create something closer to the recent slasher boom. Something more akin to Friday the 13th and My Bloody Valentine. Just as all hope for a quality film production seemed lost, Mr. Christian was hired based upon the acclaim of his two short films. Christian agreed to the job, employing his previous collaborators Pratt, composer Trevor Jones, and VFX supervisor Nick Adler for this larger production. Christian, in his own words, strived to create something closer to, quote, Bergman Van Carpenter, unquote. That's a fascinating mission statement, and this is even evident in the finished film, fortunately. Paramount seemed to agree. Apparently they were extremely dissatisfied with the Sender's initial work print cut, claimed it to be overly slow and artsy. Studio executives ordered the film re-edited to start with the ending and tell the story in flashback, as you do. After some argument in which editor Alan Strachan sided with Christian, it was put back in the original sequence, and thank goodness for that, I say. Filming interiors at Shepperton Studios in Surrey and its exteriors in the American state of Georgia, both of the Rogers received their first taste of big-budget filmmaking. And so the plot synopsis concerns a troubled telepathic man unable to fully control his abilities. This man, known as John Doe 83, is able to transmit his dreams and visions into the minds of those around him. A therapist named Gail Farmer, portrayed by Catherine Harold, tries to assist him. John Doe's connection to his mother becomes paramount to uncovering the source of these hazardous powers. There's not much to say about the plot, although I would agree with Christian's own assessment that this film could be considered more Bergman than Carpenter, as it is far more character-oriented than set-piece-oriented. Predominantly it is about the relationship between John Doe and Dr. Farmer, as she attempts to make sense of the relationship he had with his mother and how it has affected his present state of being. You can tell by the screen caps, I'm sure, how visually impressive this film is. Pratt kills it here. The music by Trevor Jones is very striking indeed. The editing is strong, courtesy of Alan Strachan, who, as mentioned before, vouched for this film's final cut to the Hollywood executives, and its VFX sequences are powerful and impressive. Lots of fantastic glass smashing, objects being thrown about, and one or two fiery explosions. The Sender is very apt for those interested in old-school practical effects and terrifying illusions of violence, and equally so for those more inclined toward character drama. due to Paramount's unenthusiastic reception towards the film, on top of poor audience test screenings, The Sender was only given a limited release theatrically in the US, and unfortunately it grossed less than its production budget. However, it was eventually selected to open for the Avoriaz Film Festival in France, where it was well received by the audiences there, and championed by the director George Miller. It was later given a theatrical release in the UK, and later in Mexico. Now, I've mentioned briefly what happened to Roger Pratt after this film's release, but what about Roger Christian? Did his directorial career continue and subsequently flourish? Well, not exactly. Actually, I couldn't tell you for certain. Oh, kind of. Kind of. I have not seen any of his follow-up pictures, I am most afraid. Here's the thing. 1984's Starship I am yet to see, but I would actually like to. Apparently, its music was composed by Tony Banks himself. Starship does not appear to have been an overwhelming commercial success, however, and certainly not critically. Christian did not make a feature film for another 10 years after Starship. He returned with Nostradamus in 1994, starring John Malkovich, which I have no interest in seeing, at least for now. He would follow up in the 90s with The Final Cut, Underworld, and Masterminds, this latter film being a Patrick Stewart starring action comedy, or so I've read. However, it was in 2000 that saw the release of Roger Christian's most famous film overall. Unfortunately, it was none other than Battlefield Earth. Yes, that Scientology thing. I've only seen clips from that film. I have little intention of finishing it. Some people enjoy Battlefield Earth for its cheesiness and camp value, alleged cheesiness and camp value, but I just find the whole thing depressing and phenomenally mundane. I can't do it. Well, that was more discussion on The Sender than I intended. It's a quality film, what can I say? This one is earnestly recommended. Horror fans will certainly dig this, fans of John Carpenter for certain, and maybe even fans of Ingmar Bergman might find something to like in The Sender also.